Kat and I and a friend made an app. And as most of you know, it's an app to help kids keep on a schedule. And at its core, it's really an easy to use alarm and planner. Um, it's geared towards kids, but it's really anybody can use it. And it's been a fun and rewarding experience. And we've learned just so much along the way that we wanted to share with you guys.
All
So
right,
Kat.
so we're going to get just briefly into the background and how the idea came about. And really, we have to back up and just talk a little bit about 2020. As we all know, 2020 is a dumpster fire of a year. So basically, since quarantine, we've all been looking for ways to kind of stay busy at home, just anything to help keep our mental sanity. So we sort of ran out of home improvement projects, which Jeff did most of. And so really this app in a lot of ways is a product of the year.
So what happened is in late July, we happened to be at the beach. I know you guys have heard me talk a lot about my spike ball crew. It's the best sport ever. I'll plug that in depth another time. But it turns out that one of the spike ball players that I play with, who we've been friends with for years, is also an app developer. He's been doing it for over 10 years. And I want to say he published his first game like 9 or 10 years ago. He has a daughter who's actually Nico's age. He has a game company as a side job. It's called Ellie's Games, and he's been making games for his daughter basically, and selling on the App Store for years. And it's done pretty well. So one day at the beach, he basically said to me, he's like, "Hey, let's make an app." And I was like, "Okay, let's do this." We threw around a few ideas and just kind of agreed to like have a happy hour and talk about it in the future.
But before we get to that, I wanted to do a quick flashback. Spring 2020, when all the schools shut down and we were suddenly having to figure out a way to help Nico while Jeff and I were still working. So we came up with I was looking at how do I keep him on a schedule, and then the Apple alarms seemed like the best way. So I set up a ton of alarms, as you can see here. And then that changed when he got his official school schedule. And they were pretty good. They worked well enough, but they were a little cumbersome kind of to update. And I still had to print out Nico's paper schedule so he knew what his day held. And, there were a few shortfalls of this using this alarm. Next.
Okay, so a little bit later in July, Eric and I got together for that happy hour brainstorming session. We're like, hey, let's talk about some ideas. We kind of talked about, like, this is the first time we'd ever worked together. So we really were like, we kind of shared a little bit of background about what we do, what our strengths were, what we were interested in. And we just really started brainstorming. It's funny, one of the first ideas that we almost did was, we're like, let's make a spike ball app. Like, it'll just be fun. It was like a team up thing, because it was one of those challenges we always had of like picking teams. But after really kind of hashing it out and getting into like an actual more viable product, we remembered back to, or I remember back to what Kat had done. I was like, we should really consider this whole school bell thing, especially because it was looking like the kids weren't going to go back to school, and it really felt like there was a need and there was an urgency for it. So we focused on that, of like putting our attention towards that, making a part-time alarm, part-time planner, and just kind of seeing where that went.
So Jeff told me that they were going to use that idea, and I was pretty excited about it. And so I started looking on the App Store for what is out there already, what are they doing? So a little bit of research, right? And so there was stuff on the App Store, but that didn't discourage us, because we just felt like that proved there was a market for the idea. And also because most of the apps that we found fell short of what I would be looking for in that type of app. They were difficult to use. They tried to do too many things. Some of them had to be tied into a school database in order to work. And they were just plain fugly.
Then in, I believe it's still late July, early August, it was time to design. So it was design time. I had a few initial thoughts. I was originally going to do wire flows and then wireframes, but it was a very fluid process. Definitely had some design requirements in mind. Wanted to make it useful. We wanted to improve on what was out there, build on the springtime experience, and keep it simple. a little background on the tools. I started XD kind of really just like, it was a real shotgun approach of just throwing a lot of ideas out there. Did some very, very light prototyping just to kind of see how it might work and just kind of really try to imagine the benefits for the user. And this happened to work out great because we were the potential user. I mean, this is solving a real need for us. So we just kind of started kind of getting some conversations going, really kind of tapping into like some potential functionality. Still very, very raw.
Sorry, I muted. So we really quickly realized that we had a lot of ideas and maybe too many ideas. And we wanted to launch the beginning of the school year, which was really ambitious considering we just started, Jeff and Eric had just started talking about this in July, and end of July it started taking shape. So we're talking about like a month to ship. So we knew we had to trim some stuff out. So initially Jeff and I brainstormed what could we take out of this app, but keep the basic functions, keep the differentiators. So we felt those were, of course, the alarms, being able to see your schedule on a daily view. And then I was really keen on keeping colors because I thought that was kind of a fun thing to do, even though it didn't seem like a basic function, a needed function. Obviously, we needed sounds, and absolutely we needed a 5-minute bell that would alert you ahead of time. When I set Nico's alarms using just the app, the alarms system, I always had to set it 5 minutes ahead of time myself. So I wanted this 5-minute bell to be a function, and we both felt like that was an essential differentiator. And then we met with Eric, our developer, to see what of our ideas he could actually build in the time frame we were hoping to. So that was probably one of the best things we did in order to get this and really focus our product.
And I'm sure we can elaborate on this a little bit later, but there was definitely some things where we had to really have some compromises and kind of like hash out like what was easy to do, what was difficult. Like there were some core things that were essential, but there was also some like kind of easy wins that he's like, oh, I can do this really quickly. I can do this really quickly. So we were able to kind of slip in a few things that we weren't really sure that we could do. And that communication was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And then we had to readdress the naming and the branding. School Bell, as you saw on the screen prior, is what the working name we had been using. But there was already an app out there called My School Bell, and just calling it. And so we had some ideas, and Jeff and I think it was one Sunday. Yeah, he has there. Sunday, August 16th. In fact, I got out a piece of paper and we just started writing a bunch of names, everything we could think of. And Home Bee was one of the first B ones that got the list. And then it just sort of evolved into Be Ready and Ready Bee. So those were the two working names once we had this list and brainstorming session on names. And as soon as the B idea came into play, Jeff's brain clicked and he started designing these logos. He saw it like immediately in his head about what that could be, and the bell aspect and all of the things. So I think he might have did all this branding work that same day.
Yeah, I went a little nuts. It was kind of funny because we were School Bell and we've been calling it School Bell the entire time. And then all of a sudden, this is like 4 o'clock on a Sunday. I'm like, hey, what do you think about changing the name and this whole branding? And I wasn't sure how it was going to go over with our developer because it was like I kind of sprung it on him, but he was into it.
And we wanted it to be descriptive enough, but also memorable. So I said School Bell was taken, and it was also kind of flat. So we felt like this just had a lot of legs and wings.
Miraculously, we had a soft launch August 20th. We specifically did that because we were so rushed. We were like, we just want to get something out the door and get it into people's hands and kind of get some testing going. And because it was so timely, we just wanted to kind of rush it. But we also knew that there was going to be some things that we wouldn't find ourselves. So we wanted to kind of like get a small experience and build off that. And so we did that August 20th. We got some really great user feedback kind of out the gate. Not a ton, but it was really the people that did engage were really helpful and helped us identify some spots we needed to work on. And then we pushed in that time between August 20th and August 26th, we pushed 2 releases that addressed some of the bugs and it was just like some logic things that there's no way we could have tested in a short period of time without that help. So now moving on, it's live. So now what? So we had this app on the App Store. It was kind of like a tree falling in the forest. No one knew about it, which was kind of neat, but it was like, you want to get some downloads. So as soon as we really pushed out the build and all the design assets on our end, we started focusing on the marketing support. So I designed and built a website pretty quickly using Divi. Some of you guys know about it. It's a framework that's built on WordPress. Super easy to build. I have experience with it, so it went like crazy fast. We put together a media kit because we were trying to get some press because of the timeliness of it. And then I'm sure you guys have seen the social posts and some of the stuff that we got together. Thank you all for the shares. It really meant a lot. We ran a short snippet of Facebook ads just to kind of to learn about Facebook ads and potential ROI. And then also Eric has a pretty established like platform of kids games. And so we were able to run banners within his existing app. So however many thousands of apps he has going, we were able to get like the kind of intro ad for free too. So we were able to get that cross promotion. So that was pretty nice. And then also watching the analytics. So that's been really fascinating for me because we usually don't get that kind of insight. So just getting on both the App Store and the Facebook data and just kind of tracking the daily movements, the trends, just kind of seeing how things are doing, impressions. It's just been something that I don't normally get a lot of visibility to, and I found it really rewarding. And just kind of seeing what works. It's still pretty early and we're looking at trends, but like one of the trends we've identified so far is sales are significantly better Monday to Thursday, and it just really falls off on the weekend. It makes sense, but like we have data to support that, at least for the short sample set that we have. Another thing we've kind of learned, and we're still learning this, is for us, ads they've had some success, but I guess in short, we're taking a loss. So it's interesting, our app is $2.99, but the average click per, or cost per acquisition is $3.10. So we're kind of playing with that, like how beneficial ads is. And it's been kind of fun just to kind of see, I mean, this is low volume, but it's been fun to kind of, to have our toe in something that we normally don't dive too deep into.
With me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are constantly trying to improve. So since we did trim our original scope to MVP, we have a lot of backlog stuff and things that we're hoping to do. So and with each release, we look and see what we'd like to improve upon. So some of the stuff in the works. Also, Eric knows an Android developer he's worked with, and so he's working on, and I think it's really close to being ready, an Android app which should also work on Chromebook. So localization, so a Spanish translation for our app, some accessibility improvements that include labeling, adding labels so that voiceover is available, and then new icons and sounds. That's always fun. In fact, we had a fan of Be Ready provide us with a sound. He's like a sound engineer or something, and he didn't really like the applause sound that we had. It was too long. So he sent us a sound to use, and we used it in the app and gave him a little shout out in the release notes. And then we're exploring iCloud syncing for multiple device compatibility.
Additionally, there's some other things that we're just kind of looking at down the road, some further along than others, but one of the things is like widgets with iOS 14 coming out, like that's an area of exploration. The Apple Watch app, Eric's going to kill me for keep pushing this, but I'm keep pushing it because I think it's an interesting, fun thing to do, probably more of a hobby thing than a real viable market situation. Anyway, it's one of those things that's kind of on our radar, long-term radar. Schedule sharing is actually high on our radar, even though it's low in the bullet. I think there's such a lot to implement to get that to going. Ideally down the road, it would be a situation where everything pushes to the cloud and it syncs device independent, whether you're on Android or iOS, and maybe even web if we get to that point. iPad split view is already in development. And then we're just kind of keep an eye on things like in-app upgrades. Like, do we ever offer like purchases for like extra sounds or icons? And then accessibility is big on Cat's radar, and it's big on Apple's radar too. So it's one of those things that we just kind of have an eye on.